Hello, everyone. Welcome to For the Record Productions. Today, we have gathered here to have an in depth discussion on G20. Now, India hosting the G20 stirred up a lot of conversation around renewable energy and sustainability. G20 has been the leading voice in promoting renewable energy and sustainability, and in the recent years, they have launched a lot of initiatives to accelerate the transition to a clean energy future. Now, in order to get a much deeper insight and to understand whether these ambitious and goals that India holds is really achievable, we are here to converse with a very well known environmentalist, Dr. A Senthil Vel. He is currently a sitting expert member judge in the National Green Tribunal. He has had a 30 to 35 years of cumulative experience in Ministry of Environment and Forest and it retired as an advisor. He was the Dean of Fisheries Institute in Mangalore.
Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to thank the students of Christ University, Bangalore, for having invited me to this discussions on renewable energy. I once again thank you for inviting me, and I look forward to having a very valuable discussion, which will be not a dialogue, but which will be a cumulative sciences, which we will be discussing upon various aspects relating to the government policies, the impacts, the environmental issues, the public policies, the stakeholder consultations, etc. So hope we'll have a very good discussion. Thank you once again for welcoming me.
Thank you. Surely, definitely. So, since G20 happened very recently in Delhi, let's start discussing by G20 and its role in promoting the renewable energy and sustainability. Now, there were some key initiatives that were discussed during this very important conference that happened. What do you think are the key areas and initiatives taken by the government?
Yes, that's a very important topic which you called me for discussing. So G20, as you know, was a very successful event which India had hosted, and many issues were discussed, and renewable energy, green energy, etc., was one of the prime areas which the government of India had flagged at. And we had moved a lot forward in the G20 meeting with regard to renewable energy. As you know, the main purpose of renewable energy is to offset the fossil energy. So we have to somehow do away with the fossil energy, which is one of the prime ingredient for generating energy. The country is energy starved. There's a huge population and things have to move. For moving things, we require energy. Let it be coal or petrol or diesel or kerosene, whatever it may be. These are fossil fuel which comes with a very high cost, both in terms of economic as well as environmental cost. So hence we need to do it, because it is not totally that it will be lifelong, it will be available. It's not perpetual. So one or the other day it will get exhausted. So we need to look forward, and India, the policy which government of India has presently brought it is astonishing. So we have moved much forward in the renewable or the green energy, and we are making the country self-sustained in the area of green energy, like the solar, the wind, the tide, the geothermal, are the various kinds of energy which are available. So we have to tap based on the availability and the economics. Like today, the solar and wind are the most derived energy in the country, which we are trying to generate as much as possible. And we are in the move to reduce the coal consumption, because coal comes at a very high cost, because mining has to be done, transportation has to be done, and thereafter it is burned. When after burning, the fly ash and the bed ash is a huge problem which the country faces. So the energy where it is generated and where it is consumed, the gap is very high. The consumers are generally the urban societies, whereas the mining is done in somewhere in the forest or rural. So at the cost of the urban areas, the rural or the tribals are getting affected. This is one of the very major areas. Hence, the government of India, keeping all the economics and the public policies and the public welfare, has taken a right measure in moving ahead with the green energy, which is very excellent, and we'll be able to achieve this in the near future.
Okay. I hear you when you say that government has made really big commitments regarding shifting to renewable energy right now. But you also mentioned the fact that India, being the world's largest populated country,
also consumes a lot of energy. So do you think that the shift, the gradual shift that they're planning, will be able to sustain it? Because there are so many other resources that we are depending on. Do you think this is a viable option for us?
See, there are two things to look at it. One is the Westerners who are using a very high energy, and it is all based on fossil fuel. So almost 40 to 50% of the emissions are from the other countries, and India is very negligible compared to the per capita. So the comparison is not possible. But somehow, and the impact of the carbon dioxide, which has been emitted right from the industrial revolution, which has been more than 500 years, they're still there in the atmosphere. And India being such a vast country with a huge population and the vagaries of the climate, and we are all our crop or agriculture is dependent upon the weather. So when the rain comes, the sowing is done, and thereafter the harvest. So the entire population depends upon the rain. Because of the carbon dioxide that has been emitted elsewhere from other countries, especially the Western countries, India is facing the huge impact of climate change, which is in adverse in nature. So the Indian population is sometimes, deprived of water in many areas because of drought, and the agriculture is affected because of the drought conditions. And sometimes there is heavy floods, which you have seen for the last several years, that the frequency and the intensity of the floods and the cyclones are increasing over a period, which is causing life and property damages. Hence, this is some of the vagaries which are happening, and India is bearing the brunt of the developed countries. That is one side. And secondly, we need to do our bit. So, like I flagged at very beginning, that the fossil fuel comes at a very high cost, and India produces very less of fossil fuel, especially the crude. So we need to import. So the taxpayers' money generally goes in terms of procuring the crude oil. Hence, we need to get ourselves self-reliant and self-sustainable. So hence, the green energy is a major option which we are trying to move into it, other than biogas and etc. So the green energy, the solar, whatever is available in plenty in the tropical area like India. So we need to harness it as much as possible. So harnessing this comes with a cost, of course, a huge capital cost, huge technological input has to be done. The storage of the solar and the energy which is generated, that comes with a huge cost. But even now, the storage capacity is very poor. Secondly, the how much percentage will move towards the green energy, so that we have a reliance on the fossil fuel, that's need to be worked out. 175 to 200 megawatts can be generated in next 10 to 15 years. That is what the government is moving ahead. And we are having a policy that minimum about text about 30 to 40% can be met by the renewable energy in next 10 to 15 years. So India is making quite a lot of progress, and there are a lot of firms which are coming up, private sector which is coming in, which are generating or is establishing solar parks, solar stations. Wind energy is coming up in a big way, especially in the south and Gujarat areas. So things are moving in a very positive direction, and we are able to get a good, clean and green energy, which is again put on the national grid, so that the entire country is benefited out of it. Yeah.
Okay, so what I understand is that you think there is a huge possibility of renewable energy shift, like taking over the fossil fuel energy that we gain. So like you said, right now that there are three commitments, like the goals that the government has made through G20 is achieving 175 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2022. Then that was their goal, and you see that it can be achieved through solar power and the other renewable energy sources. Also, do you think it's possible to reduce carbon emission considering the kind of pollution that India is facing by like reducing 30 to 35% by 2030? Do you think that's a don't you think it's an ambitious goal to have?
See, India has been putting up a very ambitious goals always, and it is achieving. So that is one good thing about the Indian mindset, is that we put something in front of us, and we start chasing it with so much zeal and energy, and every policy is towards that. So we are able to achieve many of our targets, especially in the environmental sector. That's a very good thing about the Indian policy and Indian policy makers as well. So what you have told me with regard to the carbon dioxide emissions, Now, pollution. One of the components of the pollution is carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide, which again comes from the fossil fuel. So Delhi has been one of the sufferers with regard to pollution, as you may be reading in the news media and the other print and audio medias, etc. That for the last 1 month, Delhi and the northern sector especially has been facing huge amount of pollution, which the ambient air quality standards has gone from poor to very pure to severe. There's over 200 AQQ. So that is causing a lot of respiratory diseases. Schools have been closed. The respiratory problems have increased in many areas, especially the aged and the children and the people suffering from respiratory problems, etc. So this has been a recurrent issue throughout the previous years, and especially in the winter months because of the climatic conditions where the inversion takes place, where the entire atmosphere, the dispersion is not there as the sunlight gets reduced over a period of time in the daytimes. So hence the dispersion reduces and the pollution increases. That is one factor. Now we need to reduce it. Now, the major problem in the carbon dioxide emission, of course, is a fossil fuel. The vehicle contributes to a lot, especially the diesel particles, unburned diesels, two-stroke engines from the petrol, diesel-driven vehicles, etc. But the paddy burning, which takes place in northern India, especially in the Punjab, Himachal, Haryana, and Uttar Pradesh area, this also contributes to a large extent. Now, vehicular pollution is a key issue which needs to be addressed in a mission mode. Vehicles on the roads which are older than 10 years have been banned by Government of India and also by the Honorable Supreme Court. So no diesel vehicle which is 10 years old can come onto the roadside. That is one major step the Government of India has taken. But the population of vehicles has increased so much and the road carrying capacity has reduced because of the high amount of vehicles. The idling time is taking, the vehicles are standing at various places for a longer time because of traffic congestion. Hence, the emission increases at a particular junction. Now, because of the inversion or the non-dispersion, this gets accumulated and the people are suffering. Now, to do away with this petrol or fossil-driven vehicle, Government of India has rightly brought in electrical vehicles, which we have introduced, and there has been a huge jump in number of electrical vehicles. Now, apart from electrical vehicles, electrical buses have come in, electrical autos have come in, and there is also that is the biodiesels, which is obtained from the barley and other distilled units. So ethanol, which we call it as ethanol, that is also coming into picture. And then we have got hydrogen-driven vehicles also, which is being introduced. So the hydrogen, ethanol-driven, and the electrical-driven would contribute to a major chunk in the coming days, which will reduce the vehicular pollution to a large extent. So for the electrical vehicles, again, suppose the electrical vehicles are charged with the green fuel, then it will make it much more environmentally sustainable and we'll be able to achieve the emission norms to a much reduced level. Yeah.
Okay. So since you've brought in alternate energy sources in the conversation, I would a lot of people say that since the nature of renewable energy through solar and wind or tide is it's not that cost effective as well. It requires huge power storage stations and it requires huge investment by the government. A lot of people have suggested nuclear power as because they consider it as a zero emission clean energy source. So do you think nuclear power can also be considered as part of creating a new energy source for India?
Yes, that is a very relevant question because when the population is so high and we are energy driven for all the manufacturing sectors and the vehicles, etc., are on the roads, now we require energy. Now, when the green energy is there, it contributes to certain percentage. And as I have told already, the storage is in a developing stage still. Now, the nuclear energy is one of the most predominant energies which has been used worldwide. Like France, almost all the energy which is generated in France is from the nuclear. Even UK has got several nuclear power plants. They are working. So throughout the country, where the developed countries especially, the nuclear power contributes to a large chunk of the energy sector. Now, India moving into nuclear, yes, it can. It can. We have got quite a number of nuclear plants which have been running excellently. There has been hardly any incident or any health risk which has been contributed by these nuclear plants. They are well managed, and they have been located in such ideal locations that they contribute or they pose minimum risk to any of the inhabitants or to the environment so far. So this has been excellent record from India. Now, if you want to have more nuclear plants, this requires again planning, and this can move if the government policy is there and sufficient number of nuclear power plants have to be established. Of course, it comes with a huge cost. Nuclear power plants are not very cheap. They come with a huge cost. Now, what is more important is the fuel for the nuclear power. Does India have, or do we need to import? That has to be seen. Now, based on all this, the government of India will take a policy when we are talking about renewable energy and energy requirement. So these are various other options which are available before government of India. So they can take up decisions in this direction. Of course, nuclear plays one of the major roles in the energy sector. That's it.
So, in the previous UN conferences, when we have seen, when there has always been a topic about climate change, because climate change has become as close to a natural disaster, an epidemic, or a pandemic, for that matter. And a lot of people say that the doom's clock has already started ticking. So, do you think, since you've been in the field of environment for such a long time, do you think personally and professionally, in terms of the education that you've had, uh, that we are too late to save the planet? Or
Yes, that has been a UN, right from the Paris Agreement onwards. We have been talking about reducing the ambient temperature from 2 degrees. So we are to, there has been no second thought at all on this, that the climate change has not happened. So we'll be just fooling ourselves. Suppose someone says that nothing is happening, it is only a temporary phenomenon, which is not correct. There have been incidents of high cyclonic conditions, floods, etc. The drought conditions are increasing. And as I told earlier, the frequency of these impacts or the adverse conditions are increasing over a period of time, and the intensity is also increasing. Like today, we might get a rainfall of whatever is average rainfall on record we might be getting, but it all happens within few days or 1 or 2 days. It pours, and rest after that there is a drought condition. Especially we are seeing in the western region where it pours for a few days in a month, and thereafter there has been a water scarcity. Though the water requirement, the precipitation, we will meet the requirement, but on the whole, the agriculture, crop, etc., will be get drowned because of these conditions. Hence, it is not advisable. So we are facing a climate challenge. So there is adverse effect. People are suffering because of it. There are various kinds of impacts, adverse impacts do takes place, and India is making various measures for adaptation strategies. Now, coastal environment is one of the most impacted because the sea level is rising, which is well documented. It is on rise because the tides and waves are increasing over a period of time. The salinization of land takes place. The agricultural crops are getting reduced because of the saline ingress. The fish production is decreasing in many parts of the coastal stretches because of the high temperatures. We are not getting that kind of fish, which our traditional fishermen used to get in decades back. So the fishes and the fishermen are suffering. In the mainland, the agriculture is also getting affected because of drought conditions or high flood conditions based on the seasons which they face in a period of time. So all these vagaries are happening. So the agriculture, the water level, the fisheries, the forestry, all are affected because of the impacts of climate change. Many parts of the country, like the northeast, is facing a drought condition sometimes. The middle part of the Gangetic Plain are facing drought conditions. Now, one of the main issues is the major part of, in fact, the 40% of the population lives along the Gangetic Belt. Now, imagine a condition when, because of the increase in temperature, if the temperature increase and the Himalayan glaciers tend to melt in a large scale, the entire area will be deprived of drinking water. That will be a huge disaster. So once the riverine sources get dried up, the groundwater will also get dried up. So that is subsequent. So there could be a migration of people to the water sources. So hence the disaster could take place. Suppose we don't take adequate measures at present. So Indian policy is there to improve the forest area, to increase the forest levels, conservation of water levels, taking adaptation strategies, climate mitigation steps have been taken up, renewable energy is there. So there are 10 to 11 steps the government of India has taken for adaptation strategies. Hence, we are working towards that. Maybe we'll be able to achieve it, and India is in far more better position than several of the countries which are facing climate challenges. Yeah.
Okay, I would just ask you two more questions because we are short of time. But I would want to first say that I think in the previous questions you mentioned how the developed countries have been their carbon emission has been more. So as in their effect towards the climate change has been more because their carbon footprint is more, and also industrialization and the adverse impact of it over the generations has been drastic. So there was this topic about reparations towards the developing nations came up that in the last UN meeting. So what is your opinion on it? A quick few words would be appreciated.
Of course, it has been well documented that the carbon emissions which are there and the carbon dioxide which is already present, like carbon dioxide to get completely disintegrated or getting absorbed in the system, once it comes to the atmosphere, it stays for 500 years. So that is a proven fact. So we have been accumulating the carbon dioxide emitted from last industrial revolution, that is 18th century onwards, it has been there. And the impact is mainly felt in the developing countries, which are agriculture based countries, where we depend upon water for the as main input for our agriculture. So when the water is not available, the drought condition is there then. So we are facing the problems because of the developed countries. That is factually correct, and it has been proven, and scientists have agreed. Then the UN report also says so. But we can't tell anything because that is a lifestyle which they have to take up. But India has to do its part, or the developing countries have to do its part, so that we take adequate measures. Because something happens today, no one is going to come and help us from anywhere. We have to take care of ourselves. So let it be floods or tides or any other coastal or riverine or inland, anything. So we need to take all the measures that has been possible. So I would advise, as you students over there, that yes, it has been done for over a period of time. People have done various kind of adverse things which has impacted the environment. Now today's generation is far more aware, they're far more educated, they're well sensitized about things, and they are taking all the measures. They have to reduce the consumption of the electricity and other energies. So there are very good movements the civil society has done in this regard. Plantations have been taken up by various schools and colleges, including the Christ University, which are doing excellent job, and cleaning of the various water bodies, and rejuvenating the degraded land, etc. Afforestation measures, banning plastics, because the garbage which is getting collected with the plastics is becoming huge source of adverse impact to the environment, and as they create huge amounts of methane generation, which affects the climate change also. So we have to reduce our plastics and the waste which is being generated. We need to reuse the things or refuse the things and reduce the amount of consumption. So if all the steps are done, so we can have a very harmonious relations with the environment, so that the development of today's generation as well as the future generation will be very, very compatible with the environment. So with these few words, I would like to once again thank you for giving me this opportunity to join you all. And thank you so much. I will require a final word from you, student.
Thank you so much, sir, for giving us, imparting your knowledge and your experience in the few minutes of conversation that we have had. I feel personally that being a student right now and being in the current generation, it is scary to be in a position where the pollution levels are so high and with the climate changing so fast that it is scary. But in conversation with you and looking at the progress that the country has been making, there is some hope. And as individuals, we have a lot to look forward to and a lot to do ourselves. So I hope this sensitizes people, and I hope this spreads more awareness. Thank you so much for joining. And
thank you so much. Thank you so much.